All right, guys, today we're doing more quadratic formula. It's pretty much the same as yesterday. Remember, when we do quadratic formula, it has to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then we plug it into the quadratic equation, which is right below that. There's some steps on what to do at the bottom. It might help you if you need it. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, I want to change one thing about this. We're not going to round answers to the nearest tenth. We're just going to leave them in their fraction forms. It's actually going to save you some time. So number one is 3n squared minus 2n equals 6. First thing we have to do is put it in the right form, and that 6 needs to be on the other side. So I'm going to subtract 6 from each side, and I get 3n squared minus 2n minus 6 equals 0. Now it's in the correct form. So I'll pull out my a, which is 3, my b, which is negative 2, and my c, which is negative 6. Now I plug it into my equation. So I have negative times, well, first it's x equals, sorry. Negative times, and remember, put all your stuff in parentheses. My b is negative 2, plus or minus the square root of b, negative 2, squared, minus 4 times our a3 times our c, which is negative 6. And all of that is divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 3. Remember, put every a, b, and c in parentheses. Now, negative times negative 2 gives us positive 2 plus or minus the square root of. And guys, all this stuff right here, from here to here, can be put in your calculator at the same time if you'll put it all with parentheses exactly how it's written. Do not use the square root sign yet. If you put all that in, you should get that you have the square root of 76, and that's divided by 2 times 3, which is 6. Now, 76 is not a perfect square, so we're going to have to break it up. Our first perfect square is always 1, but that doesn't help us. Our second is 4. And if I divide 76 by 4, I find out that I can get it times 19. So that one did work. So I can change the square root of 76 to the square root of 4 times 19, which is the same as the square root of 4 times the square root of 19. The square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 19 stays the same. So I'm going to replace the square root of 76 with 2 square roots of 19. So I have 2 plus or minus 2 square roots of 19 over 6. So that's really close to our answer. If you left it that way, it'd only take off a couple of points, but you have to look and see if there's anything we can that'll help us simplify. I have a 2, and a 6, and I can take a 2 out of each. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, plus or minus. Now I'm going to write this over to the side. I have 2 square roots of 19 divided by 2. That cancels out the 2's, leaves me the square root of 19. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So since we have that radical left in there that we can't do anything with, that's our answer. Now remember, that is 2 answers because one is 1 plus the square root of 19 over 3. The other is 1 minus the square root of 19 over 3. But you can leave it just like that. All right, let's go on to number 2. X squared equals x minus 8. Now again, we need everything on the same side. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 8 and add, or subtract x and add 8 to both sides. That plus doesn't look good there. So now I have x squared minus x plus 8 equals 0. So that makes my a 1, my b negative 1, and my c 8. So now we just go ahead and put it in our equation. So I have x equals, I have negative times my b value, negative 1, plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 8. Now I have that divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 1. So if we move over to the next step, a negative times a negative 1 is positive 1, plus or minus the square root of. And remember, you can put this all in your calculator at once. Put all the stuff inside the square root into your calculator, exactly how we wrote it, without the square root. You should get negative 31 divided by 2. Now we're left with a negative inside the square root. That simply means we have no real solutions. So if you have a negative inside the square root, you just put no real solutions and you're finished. All right, let's go to the next one. I have 32 equals 16x minus 2x squared, And you could move the 32 over, and that's perfectly fine, or you can move the 16 and the negative 2x squared to the other side. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 16x and add 2x squared to both sides. When I do that, I get 2x squared minus 16x plus 32 equals 0. Now it's in the form that we want, so we can write our a, b, and c. I have that a is 2, b is negative 16, and c is 32. Now those are bigger numbers than we're used to, but don't let big numbers bother you in this because you have a calculator, so it shouldn't be a big deal at all. So I have x equals my negative times my b value, negative 16, plus or minus the square root of negative 16 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is 32. All that is divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 2. Now, just like last time, we can use our calculator for a lot of this. A negative times negative 16 is positive 16, plus or minus the square root of. Again, we can put this all on our calculator at the same time without the square root. If you do that, you should get 0 divided by 4. Now, the square root of 0 is 0, so I have 16 plus or minus 0 over 4. But 16 plus 0 and 16 minus 0 are both 16. And we divide that by 4, and we get our answer is 4. So just like when we were factoring and solving that way, sometimes we get one answer, sometimes you can get one answer here. If what's under your square root ever ends up being 0, you should just get one answer. All right, so that's just a quick thing over yesterday's stuff. Be careful, make sure you put it in the right order, and other than that, it's mainly calculator. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. Now, this is an application. It says in the drawing below, or the drawing below represents the path of an object that is thrown into the air. So it's on the ground, I throw it in the air, it makes an arc, and it comes back down to the ground. Now, the path of the ball that is thrown upwards can be described by the equation h equals 35t minus 5t squared, where h is the height of the ball in meters and t is time in seconds. Now, it asks us 3 questions about this, and you have to be careful and make sure you know what it's asking. A says, how high is the ball after 3 seconds? Well, it's asking for height h, and it gave us seconds, so what that tells me, if they told me t equals 3. So if I look at my equation, there's places I could plug in my t, so let's go ahead and do that. I have h equals 35 times my t value of 3 minus 5 times 3 squared. And that can be put just in your calculator just how it is. If you put it in, you should get 60. So my answer is 60, but it's meters. If you don't put meters, I will take off. So be careful, make sure you know what they're asking for. B says after how many seconds will the ball be 50 meters high? Well, this gave me a height, so it's telling me that h is 50. So this is going to be a little bit different. I need to plug in h, so I have 50 equals 35t minus 5t squared. Now, we have to solve for t to do this. The only way we know how to solve a quadratic is by using the quadratic formula. So first, I'm going to get it in the right order. I'm going to subtract the 35t and add the 5t squared to both sides. There's not a lot of room, so just imagine that I wrote this stuff over there also. So now, if I write it in the right order, I get 5t squared minus 35t plus 50 equals 0. Now, again, since we don't have much space, I'm going to go ahead and say that's A, that's B, and that's C. So let's plug it into our equation. I have x equals negative times b, which is negative 35, plus or minus the square root of negative 35 squared minus 4 times a, which is 5, times c, which is 50. And that's all divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 5. So we can go ahead and simplify. And yeah, these are big numbers, but it shouldn't be that bad. I have 35 plus or minus the square root of. So if you put all that stuff into the square root in your calculator, you should get, I believe it's 1225 minus 1,000, so you get 225. And that's all divided by 10. Now, if you ever get a number in the square root that's really big, you might check and see if it's a perfect square. In this case, it is, and you get 35 plus or minus 15 divided by 10. Now we can split that up. I have 35 plus 15 over 10, and I have 35 minus 15 over 10. 35 plus 15 gives me 50, and 50 divided by 10 gives me one answer, which is 5. 35 minus 15 is 20, and 20 divided by 10 is 2. So our solution is it happens at 2 and at 5 seconds. Now the reason we get two answers there is it's going up in an arc. So it goes up and hits 50 meters, goes a little bit higher, comes down, and at 5 seconds it also hits 50 meters. All right, guys, so we've got one more. Let's go ahead and get it finished. It says, when will the ball hit the ground? Now, the word when makes me think they're looking for time, but they didn't give me a number. But if it's on the ground, that means our height is at 0. So it's just like the last problem, it's just our height is 0. So I'm going to put 0 equals 35t minus 5t squared. Now, there's no point in moving anything because 0 is on the other side. We don't have a c value, it looks like, but I'm going to just rearrange so that it's in ax squared first. So I have negative 5t squared plus 35t. Now, it may be a little weird to see, but they gave us everything we need. I have an a, I have a b, but there's no number out here for c, which means it equals 0. So let's plug those in. I have negative times my b value of 35, plus or minus the square root of 35 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 5, times c, which is 0, all divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times negative 5. Now we can do it inside our square root. I don't know why I made that so long. So I'm going to have, let's see, negative 35. Ooh, I'm sorry. Yeah, negative 35. Plus or minus the square root of. And we're going to have, if you do that, you should get that, let's see, 1225. And all that's divided by negative 10. Now, we can actually take the square root of 1225. It's a really big number, but if you do, you get negative 35 plus or minus 35 divided by negative 10. So we can split that up in two just like on the last one. I'm going to have negative 35 plus 35 over negative 10. Negative 35 plus 35 is 0 over negative 10, which gives me 0 for one of my answers. Then I have negative 35 minus 35 over negative 10, which is negative 70 over negative 10, which gives me positive 7. So my answer at 0 seconds and at 7 seconds. We better put our seconds on there. All right, guys. If you have any more questions, please let me know. Do the best you can. If you don't have a calculator, go as far as you can, and we can finish that up when you get back. Good luck.